Life, which was once full of color and wonder, can suddenly feel empty and meaningless. When we are children, everything seems to have a special glow. The world is an endless sequence of discoveries. Everything felt magical because we didn't carry the weight of worries. In childhood, we lived in the present with intensity. A single day felt like an eternity because we were completely immersed in every moment. Laughter came easily. Questions were endless, and even the smallest events held deep meaning. Time. Time. Its pace changes, too. As children, a year felt enormous. But as we grow older, the days pass faster, weeks dissolve before we even notice. Routine takes hold of us, and the world stops being a place of surprises and becomes a repetitive cycle. Suddenly, we find ourselves trapped in a pattern where each day feels like a copy of the one before. We wake up, work, deal with problems, sleep, and repeat. Life no longer feels like something we truly live. Instead, it becomes something we merely endure. That sense of wonder starts to fade. Little by little, we learn that there are duties to fulfill, expectations to meet. What once was just play now becomes a waste of time. We're told we need to be productive, responsible, mature, and without even realizing it, we begin to see life differently, not as an open field of possibilities, but as a place filled with obligations and worries. And so, that childhood glow slowly fades away. Over time, we get used to this feeling that something has been lost. Routine swallows up the days, and life becomes a series of obligations. But what happens when that weight becomes too much? When frustration and emotional exhaustion go beyond what we can bear? Without realizing it, many people start to create an internal distance, a kind of emotional anesthesia that serves as a shield. It's a subtle process that settles in gradually. At first, it might just feel like exhaustion. Then, small joys begin to lose their intensity. That song that used to move you no longer hits the same way. Leisure activities become automatic, lacking the same genuine satisfaction. This type of psychological protection almost feels like a necessity. After all, if feeling hurts, maybe it's better not to feel. If life is disappointing, maybe it's better not to expect much from it. And so, without noticing, we start closing ourselves off. The problem is that this emotional defense doesn't distinguish between pain and pleasure. When we shield ourselves from disappointments and frustrations, we also shut ourselves off from experiences that could bring us meaning. Relationships become superficial. Laughter loses its spontaneity, and enthusiasm fades. At some point, life stops being lived and becomes something merely endured. But enduring is not the same as living, and this emotional numbness, which initially feels like protection, can turn into a prison. When life becomes this tangled mess of indifference, some ancient philosophies suggest a path: detachment. For centuries, thinkers like Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Lao Tzu have reflected on human suffering and reached a similar conclusion. Much of our pain comes from excessive attachment to things beyond our control. In Stoicism, for example, there's the idea that we shouldn't waste energy trying to change what is out of our hands. The world will follow its course, regardless of our will. Accepting this can bring a certain peace, not fighting the inevitable, not clinging to expectations, not depending on external circumstances to find inner balance. In Taoism, the concept of Wu Wei teaches us that it's better to flow with the current of life rather than swim against it. There is a natural harmony in things, and trying to control them only creates more suffering. Instead of resisting, the idea is to learn to dance with life's events without fearing its constant movement. The root of suffering lies in desire, in the craving for more, in the need for life to conform to our wishes. By letting go of these attachments, we can reach a deeper state of peace. And in fact, these ideas make sense. When we accept the impermanence of things, when we stop trying to force the world to be something it is not, we suffer less. Detachment frees us from the obsession with control and teaches us to deal better with loss, change, and uncertainty. But there's a limit. When detachment becomes absolute, it can lead to a state of apathy. If nothing matters, if nothing affects us, if everything is temporary and irrelevant, then where do we find meaning? There's a fine line between finding peace in detachment and becoming indifferent to existence itself. And it is precisely in that balance that we find the key to making our way back. Detachment can be armor against suffering, but like any armor, it comes at a price. You've probably had a callus form on your foot or another part of your body. It develops to protect a sensitive area from repeated friction. At first, this protection is useful, but if the callus grows too thick, it also reduces sensitivity to touch. What started as a defense mechanism ends up isolating us from the full experience of the world. The same happens with emotions. If we completely shut ourselves off from pain, we also close ourselves off from pleasure, from genuine connection with others, from those subtle moments that give color to our existence. Not feeling anything might seem safe, but it's not the same as being at peace. The solution isn't to surrender to suffering or to shield ourselves from it entirely. The balance lies in learning to accept life as it is, with its ups and downs, its unpredictability, and its moments of unexpected beauty. This means allowing ourselves to feel. It doesn't mean being a slave to emotions, but it also doesn't mean suppressing them. Sadness has its place. Fear has its reason for existing, and joy, when it comes, should be lived fully, without fearing that it will end. After all, being alive isn't just about surviving, it's about feeling, accepting life as it is, with its uncertainties, pains, and joys, doesn't just mean understanding this idea intellectually, it means living it. Feeling is not a mistake, and avoiding feelings is not a solution. But after spending so much time in a state of apathy or emotional detachment, it can be difficult to remember how to reconnect with what once felt meaningful. The good news is that finding the way back doesn't require major upheavals. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment, a drastic change, or a life-altering epiphany. The rediscovery of joy happens gradually, almost silently, through small actions that reignite what once felt lost. The endless repetition of days can make life feel like a closed space with no windows. Small changes in routine act like cracks where light can slip through. Taking a different route to work, trying a new coffee, listening to a song you've never heard instead of the one that plays on autopilot. These details may seem insignificant, but they create small breaks in predictability. And every break in predictability brings the chance for a fresh perspective, a new sensation, a different meaning. When life loses its color, it's often because we've lost the habit of creating. Creating not in the sense of producing something, useful or technically perfect, but in the sense of expressing ourselves. Writing with no clear goal, drawing without worrying about technique, playing an instrument without rushing to master something new. These are ways to reconnect with our own emotions. Creating something is a reminder that there is still something inside us waiting to be lived. Apathy can also stem from a lack of genuine exchanges. In the midst of exhaustion, we distance ourselves from people without even realizing it. Conversations become short, meetings are postponed, and over time, the feeling of disconnection grows. Reconnecting doesn't have to be a dramatic move. It can start with a simple gesture, sending a message, asking how someone is doing, showing real interest. Small interactions are enough to remind us that there are still bonds, that there is still room for human warmth. Discomfort isn't always the enemy. When we protect ourselves too much from frustration, we also end up shielding ourselves from the feeling of accomplishment. Stepping out of our comfort zone doesn't have to be extreme. It can be something small, learning something new, trying a different skill, saying yes to something that would usually be a no. Sometimes, a single step outside the usual routine is enough to reignite a sense of purpose. External circumstances don't always change, but the way we see them can completely transform our experience of life. Pain is not a flaw in the system. Emptiness is not the end of the road. They are just phases, parts of the whole. And just as the seasons change, so do we. What feels like an endless winter today may, little by little, reveal an invincible summer within us. Even when everything feels stagnant, even when life loses its spark and the days blur into an empty repetition, there is something within us that never completely disappears, something silent yet resilient. A force that, even when ignored, is still there. Albert Camus wrote, "In the middle of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer." This quote carries a powerful reminder. No matter how cold our seasons may be, no matter how much despair tries to convince us that nothing matters anymore, there is within us an innate ability to be reborn. Resilience is not about denying pain, nor is it forced optimism. It is the ability to keep going, even when everything seems lost. It is the awareness that no feeling is permanent. What seems endless today will one day become a memory. What feels heavy now may, over time, lose its weight. What seems meaningless in this moment may unexpectedly reveal a new purpose. Just as the seasons change, so do our perceptions. Sadness is not eternal. Emptiness is not a final destination, but a passage. And within each of us, there is a quiet flame, waiting for the right moment to reignite. The meaning of life is not something we stumble upon, waiting to be discovered. It is something we build, something that reveals itself in the small choices we make every day, in moments of connection, in the times we allow ourselves to feel. Even when everything seems pointless, there is always something new ahead. A book we haven't read yet, a conversation we haven't had, a place we haven't been. Life renews itself when we open up to these possibilities, when we understand that apathy is not a permanent state but a temporary phase. There is no final destination. Growth is constant, learning never ends, and what feels lost today may, over time, transform into a new beginning. Creating a rich and meaningful inner world does not mean running away from pain or denying difficulties. It means allowing ourselves to live, to feel, to change. Because in the end, that's what being alive is all about. A continuous movement, a journey where every step, no matter how small, takes us somewhere new. If this message resonated with you, if in some way it brought you a new perspective, share it with 3 people you love. Maybe they need to hear this today too. And if you want to keep receiving reflections like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That helps me bring more content that can make a difference in your life. Oh, and don't forget to leave a like. That simple gesture helps this message reach more people who might need it. I'm leaving a video on the screen that I know you'll enjoy. Feel free to click and continue this journey with me. That's it for now. A big hug. May God bless you and your family.